Reviewing lessons 7.1 through 7.4 plus IN1. If you look at page 441, a lot of this is stuff that we haven't looked at yet in this chapter. One thing we have looked at is number 3, which we might recognize that as being a rhombus. All 4 sides are the same length. It's a 4-sided figure, so that would make that a rhombus for number 3. Page 442, if we look at lesson 1, was on finding the areas of parallelograms and rhombuses. So the formula will be given to you on your test. Area of that is base times height. So the base and height always meet each other at a right angle. So for number 1, I would suggest go ahead and write down your formula first. And then if we look at this, we could say our base is 4, our height is 9, and if we multiply, would be 36. Area of something is always square units, because it's basically how many squares could we put inside of our shape. So in this case, 36 square meters would be the area of that parallelogram. Number 2, we actually have another parallelogram. Technically, the sides are not, oh, no we don't, sorry. We actually have a rhombus because the sides are the same here. But our base is 8, our height is 7.9. And so if you multiply those, you should get 63 2/10 square centimeters. Okay. And again, if you're allowed to use a calculator, then you could just put that in the calculator. Otherwise, if you're doing it by hand, remember, when you multiply decimals, you don't have to line your decimal points up. You just have to remember at the end how many spots to move your decimal over. And one thing when you do these problems, try to remember your units, square meters, square centimeters, okay? If I tell you the area is 36, you know, if I don't have units with it, really it doesn't mean a whole lot. It doesn't do me a whole lot of good. Lesson 2 was solving triangle area problems. So area of a triangle, we're going to use this formula. Again, will be given to you. Is 1/2 times the base times the height. Once again, the base and the height meet each other at a right angle. So number 1's kind of a strange look maybe for us. But technically, we could say 2 is our base and 5 is actually our height, okay? How tall is the triangle is 5 yards. So at this point, since 2 is an even number, if you want to go ahead and take half of 2, which is 1, and then 1 times 5 is 5, so that would be 5 square yards would be the area of that triangle. We look at number 2. Similar idea, only if you'll notice on this problem, they've actually given you 3 numbers. One of the numbers you do not need because you only need 2, base and height. The base would be the 8 feet. The height meets it at a right angle, how tall the triangle is, which is 6. So the 10 feet we actually don't need in order to find the area. If we were finding perimeter, we would need it, but not for the area. So once again, we happen to have an even number here. So if you want half of 8 is 4, and then 4 times 6 is 24. So 24 square feet would be the area of the triangle. Lesson 3, they want us to find the areas of trapezoids and kites. So if we look at number 1, actually there are 4 sides, and 2 of the sides are parallel to each other, so that makes that a trapezoid. Might not be what we're used to seeing as one, but it is a trapezoid. So trapezoid formula will be given for you also. So we're just going to substitute in to the formula here. So the height of our triangle here is 11. and the bases are 5 and 6 or 6 and 5. Just remember the bases are always the parallel sides, the two sides that are parallel, okay? Because remember, they could take our parallelogram or trapezoid, any of these shapes, they could turn them, and we still have to recognize those parallel sides as being the bases, okay? From this point then, we could just go ahead and add the bases together. So 6 plus 5 is 11. 11 is not an even number, so if you want to, you could go ahead and multiply these in whatever order you want. So if you wanted to, you could do 11 times 11 is 121, and then you could take half of that, would be 60 and a half, or 60.5 square centimeters. Technically, once you've got it set up like half times 11 times 11, you could do that all in your calculator. Remember, half's the same as 0.5. If you were typing that in your calculator, it'd be a little bit easier way. Or you can put 1/2 in your calculator as 1 divided by 2, would also work. We look at number 2. I'm going to start out with my formula again. Good idea to write your formulas and then substitute into those. So probably best to look for your bases first, the parallel sides, which in this case would be 13 and 1. Height would be 12. And if we add 13 and 1 is 14. Those are both even, so whatever you want to do. Half of 12 is 6, and then 6 times 14 would be 84. So 84 square meters. Or if you wanted to, you could have done half of 14 is 7. 12 times 7, maybe a little more familiar to you, to get 84 square meters. Another option you actually have on that problem would be to split it up into 2 triangles and then a rectangle down the middle. And in that case, you would need to know that 6 meters that they're telling you. We look at number 3. 3 is actually what we call a kite. We're not going to fly this kite though. We're going to find the area of it. So for the kite, if you remember what we did, we split it up into 2 triangles that were identical to each other. So in this case, if we split left half and right half, and area of a triangle is half base times height. So altogether, 4 plus 8 would be 12, would be our base of our triangle, and 4 would be the height. Half of 12 is 6. 6 times 4 is 24. That would be for one triangle, and then we know the other one's just the same. So we could say, 24 is the second triangle, because it's the same as that one. And then you could just do 24 plus 24, or 24 times 2 would be 48 square inches. Okay, number 4 is going to be a similar idea. If you work out on number 4, you should come up with 28 square inches. Lesson 4, finding areas of polygons. This is where we split these up into different shapes. You might expect a little bit more of a challenge than this. Finding the area of a polygon. We do want to split this up into different shapes and then add the areas together. So we could split this horizontally here into 2 rectangles. Area of a rectangle is length times width. That is one area formula you need to memorize. Length times width for the rectangle. That will not be on your reference sheet. It will not be on your reference sheet when you do your iLearn tests. So we're not going to give it to you now. So length is 6, width is 2 on our top rectangle. So 6 times 2 is 12. Would be our first area. Second area, same idea, length times width. So our dimensions there would be 7 and 3. So 7 times 3 is 21. and then we can add those two together. So 12 plus 21, which is 33. So 33, we don't know what they're doing here exactly, so we'll just say 33 square units. Technically for that problem you could count your squares, but don't expect too many problems like that. You could do that as a double check. I'd like you, even if you got a problem like this, to actually work it out this way and then double check by counting the squares, just to get some practice with that. Lesson IN1 we did was on the sum of the angle measures in triangles and quadrilaterals. So what you need to remember, in a triangle, the angles add up to 180 degrees. Quadrilaterals, the angles add up to 360. If you forget this, easy way to remember it is think of a rectangle. In a rectangle, you have 4 right angles, 4 90-degree angles. Gives you 360 degrees. And your rectangle, you could actually split that up into 2 triangles. If the 2 triangles were the same, each one would have 180 degrees. You'll want to go back and look through the different problems that you did with those. Some problems, they might just give you 2 angles and you're asked to find a 3rd angle. Some of them, they might be like other shapes and things that kind of you have to work your way towards finding the missing measurements. So again, if you just look back at what we did in the lesson, stuff you guys can do some things on the Pearson realize.com website to get some practice on all of these lessons as well.